stream is about to start. We'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Hello, I am Leandro Facchinetti, and let's write some code together, shall we? What we have on the menu today is almost finishing, perhaps even finishing. I don't know, I'm not gonna make any promises. I made promises in the past, they didn't work out. But we are almost at the finish line of this audio effect in Reaper. Turns out to be a video effect, so to speak, I guess, because it is just a visualization thing. But that's the main focus of the library we are developing together for JSFX, for real-time audio processors in Reaper. The main focus is visualization, so showing you what the effect will do to your audio. And to begin with, we started with this little effect here that shows the waveform going across, and that's mostly for, like, I guess it's a utility kind of thing. It can be kind of nice to see all the waveforms on all the tracks on a project. So that's what we started with. And specifically, what we are going to do today is to add support for clicking and dragging. So what I have in mind is you would start the plugin, you would configure the plugin with the settings that you like the most. So perhaps you prefer the vertical display, and perhaps you would like to have a different color. And then you would add the plugin to the mixer control panel or the track control panel, depending on the workflow that you prefer. I think that it makes more sense to have it on the mixer control panel, because on the track control panel, for the most part, you will have the waveform here. But anyway, you may want to put this after a couple effects, so I think it still makes sense to have that. And then you would perhaps save this as an effects chain, so it's easy to come to pull it up again. Or perhaps you would do a track template. In any case, you would have something that looks like this. And I think it would be nice to allow the person to click and drag to zoom. So right now there is this slider to zoom, and that already works. But I think it would be cute if you could zoom from this part of the interface, if you could just click and drag to zoom into the waveform. So that's what we're gonna do today. And I'm laughing because I have very little experience, or I guess I should say I have zero experience with this kind of stuff. All my effects so far have relied on sliders. And I do have user interfaces on some of my plugins, but they are always for visualization. I never have sliders or knobs on the user interface. So I have never worked with clicking and dragging and that sort of thing. So no mouse interactivity on the user interface. And that's what we are about to get into. So I took a brief read over the docs, and these are the capabilities that we have at our disposal. Very few and far apart. We have very little to work with in terms of infrastructure. We have simply the coordinates of the cursor, the buttons that are clicked, including modifiers like if the control is being held, and then the position of the mouse wheel. So if you think about it, we only have the current stage, the instantaneous stage of the mouse at any given point. And this is the only thing that JSFX is going to give us. That is sort of on purpose, because the intent of JSFX was to give the bare minimum and allow people to build on top of that. And that's what we are going to start doing, build on top of that. So we only have access to the current state of the mouse. We will have to come up with the notion of, for example, clicking and dragging. That's not something that we can ask about in JSFX. We'll have to build this notion ourselves. On the one hand, this is kind of sad because it will be a lot of work, but on the other hand, we will be able to control more how interactions will work. And also, it is kind of a fun exercise to build everything from such basic functionality. So I kind of enjoy building things from first principles, in case you haven't noticed. In my career here on YouTube, in case you haven't noticed, I really enjoy understanding how things work and building things from first principles. So it's kind of nice that these are the things that come with JSFX. All right, so let's get into it. And the first thing I want to do is to test how these things work, to put the documentation to test, I guess, right? We are going to write some code that exercises this stuff, and we'll see if the documentation is in line to us, because sometimes documentations do that. So I guess first, let's see if on the right hand of this panel here, the IDE that comes with REAPER, let's see if we have these variables listed. Should have. And they all start with M, so I expect to find them. So there are different sections. These are the user variables, the variables that the programmer wrote. And because we are using the library, we have a lot of them. Then there are named strings. They are also user variables. And then we have system variables. And we expect to find the mouse stuff in here somewhere. And here it is. So these are the 5 variables that are documented. So far, so good. And let's start with the coordinates, x and y. One interesting thing is that the coordinates are defined even if your cursor is outside the plugin. You can see the numbers changing. And I guess that's a requirement, because think of a knob. We'll not have one, but we'll have this box behave like a knob. So you would be able to click and drag into the box, and your cursor would be going up, perhaps beyond the display, beyond the user interface. And still, we would like the knob to continue responding. And the 0, 0 coordinate is right over here on the top left. So we are getting coordinates that are relative to the display. If I move, so yeah, let's do the following. I'll put my cursor here on top of this window, I guess, right here in the middle of the X. And that's position 338. But if I move the window, then, oh, not so much that it covers this. But if I move the window, then now it's not 338 anymore. So this is a relative coordinate, and it exists regardless of my cursor position. So that's kind of cute. I could have something that would perhaps even, it's not a knob, it would just respond to the cursor position wherever you are on the screen, except that I don't really have a notion of where this is in relation to the screen. Yeah, so that could not work. Anyway, Dale is here. Hello, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me. And I know that your plugins, Dale, they do amazing stuff in terms of the audio processing, in terms of digital signal processing, and even your library has a lot of that. But if I remember correctly, your library doesn't have a lot of things in terms of user interface, right? Have you worked with all this mouse stuff before? And how did that go? Any peekaboos that I should look out for? Any weird behavior that you already know? Let me know. Right, so the cursor position is working fine. Then the mouse wheel, okay, I'm scrolling the mouse wheel and it seems to work. If I scroll the mouse wheel outside the plugin, then that doesn't work. But that makes sense, right? Because the mouse wheel should interact with what I'm on top of. And if I move my mouse wheel and go out and then come back in, the state of the mouse wheel is preserved. So it is as if there is this, not as if, it's exactly the case that there is this internal state that you manipulate with the mouse wheel. And it seems to go from 0 to 360, like in degrees, I suppose. And it doesn't go in steps of 1. Oh, it goes beyond 360. Oh, hang on. This number is unbounded. Oh, cool stuff. So it doesn't cycle. And I guess in most cases, we will not be interested in the coordinates and the mouse wheel. We'll be interested in the coordinate changes and the mouse wheel changes. So we'll be interested in knowing, for instance, if you drag your cursor. We'll be interested in knowing if you scrolled the wheel. We'll not be interested in the absolute number here. We'll be interested in the difference between consecutive reads of this variable. Or, I guess what they say here, this will change typically by a 120 or a multiple thereof. The caller should clear the state to 0 after reading it. So I guess we would detect a mouse wheel. Oh, come on, come back. Yeah, so we would detect a mouse wheel movement and we would reset it to 0. Yeah, that's better because then it doesn't become this unbounded number, right? It's bounded by how much you can scroll between consecutive frames of the user interface. Oh, okay. I don't think I played with that one. Oh, but right, yeah, on your website. There is a print screen of this, right? Yeah, here it is. Silly me. Yeah, I guess most of the plugins that I played with that you developed, they were like this, but yeah, there is this one. So yeah, there you go. If you know things that I should know before I get started, then let me know. And I guess the same is true of the horizontal wheel, but I don't have a horizontal wheel. Oh, I do. I can hold Shift, and then if I hold Shift and scroll the scroll wheel, then it changes the horizontal wheel. And it also sets this capability over here. We'll get to that in a moment. So we are able to set the wheel positions. Are we able to set the X and Y? Sorry, I'm thinking about this because let's look at how knobs behave here on the REAPER interface. If I click and drag, my cursor has been captured. And when I let go, the cursor is on the same place. So clicking and dragging doesn't move my cursor across the interface. And I think that makes sense, because if you want to make a big change, so think of a case where you have a couple knobs, one next to the other, and you want to make big changes to a couple of them. So you would click and drag, and then your cursor would be all over the place. And then you would have to drag it back around and find the next knob, and then move that one. And then your cursor would be over there, and it would have to go to the next one. So yeah, you got my point. It is better to capture the mouse this way. Is this something that is possible to do in JSFX? Perhaps. Perhaps if we set the mouse wheel, it sets it back to 0, and if we set the mouse positions, it will snap the mouse there. Well, that's something that we can test. I guess my first test is going to be to load a plugin that I know has good user interfaces and see how they are doing it. So here in ReQ, if I put a band and click and drag, it does not capture my cursor. So this is a case where I have multiple knobs one next to the other, and if I knew that I wanted to change all three of them real quick, I would have to click and drag, and then my cursor would be somewhere, and I would have to click and drag, and then my cursor would be somewhere else, and I would have to click and drag. It's not the end of the world, but yeah, it is what it is. Let's look at another one. This one. So if I click and drag, same story. And just because of this experiment, I'm led to believe that if I set mouse X and Y, my values will not be respected, but let's give it a try. I have this test plugin that I used to test which sections of code ran and when and blah blah. We looked at this yesterday. I'm going to remove this stuff and have just a JSFX block. And I will set some mouse X, mouse Y equals 100. So if this works, the mouse gets captured by the plugin. I don't think it will work though. But let's try it. Yeah, so this is the plugin, and yeah, it doesn't seem to work. Let's go to the debugger real quick. Here we are. Oh, setting the variable works in the sense that I can no longer read the mouse position. When I move my cursor, these variables don't update. But it doesn't work in the sense that it does not capture the mouse. So this behavior that I would like to have seems to be impossible in JSFX, because you don't have that, you cannot exert that kind of control over the cursor. Well, okay, it is what it is. And Bo is here. Hello. It's great to have you both here. Thanks for joining me. Right, so what's next? We were looking at... Or I guess I can filter instead of scrolling. Hey, there you go. So mouse X and Y we cannot set to. These two we can set to. At least that's what the documentation says, but I will just trust it. And then we have this mouse capabilities. So let's get to the mouse capabilities. They go like this. If I click with my left mouse button, that becomes 1. So it's a bitmap, okay? The values we are going to see are going to be powers of 2. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so forth. Am I right? Yes. And when I click with my right button of my mouse, that value changes to 2. But the beauty of having this as powers of 2 is that if I click with both left and right, then I have 3 there, 1 plus 2. And because they are all powers of 2, there is no chance of clashing. So if I have any kind of number there, like 3, I can always decompose that number in powers of 2, in this case 1 plus 2. And I can see the stage of all my mouse buttons and all keyboard modifiers. Fun. And that's a kind of a clever design, and it's nothing new. It's nothing that Caucus created. It's just a bitmap. Anyway, so we are not really going to look at this number as a decimal number. We are going to interpret that number as a series of zeros and ones, and each 0 and 1 is going to determine the state of one button on the mouse. So left button is 1, right button is 2, and let's refer to the docs to see what else we have. So the control key, it's funny that this is called mouse capabilities, because it has, or I guess it is capabilities. I don't know if cap stands for capability. Who knows? Abbreviations are tricky. But in any case, it's funny that it says mouse and it's actually doing stuff that has to do with the keyboard as well. And there is no keyboard cap kind of thing. Yeah, is cap capabilities? Now I don't know. I think it's just a hatch. Anyway, so control, and I guess I'm in macOS, so it's command. That's 4. Shift is 8. We saw this before. If I want to do horizontal wheel, I actually have to hold, because my mouse doesn't have a horizontal wheel, I have to hold shift and then scroll. But then it also sets the mouse cap to 8. And the other interesting thing is that this works, this mouse cap works, even if I am outside the user interface of the plugin. Oh, never mind me, I guess I'm wrong. Yeah, it works. As long as REAPER is in focus, so in this case, I have the IDE in focus. And still, when I hold Control, oh no, I'm wrong. Okay, as long as I have the plugin open, that will capture the modifiers. So I have to have the plugin in focus. Okay, now that makes sense. We understand what's going on. As long as I have the plugin in focus, I don't have to be on top of the user interface, but as long as the plugin is the foremost window, I can hold modifiers and they will work. And then option is 16, control is 32, and the middle mouse button is 64. If I click outside the user interface, then that isn't captured. So that's another thing to keep in mind. The keyboard is captured even if the cursor is outside, but the mouse is not. In any case, the middle button does send a 64. So if I press all mouse buttons as well as all modifiers, we get 127. And that's when there are 7 bits, and they are all set to 1. Fun stuff. Maybe mouse cap stands for mouse capture. That is a better, that's a better explanation. Thank you, Tail. Yeah, mouse capture, because it's capturing the state of the mouse. And it says here, note that a script must call this at least once in order to get modifier state when mouse is not captured by the window. So I guess this has to do with the focus that I was talking about. And the cursor X and Y is still updated even if other windows are in focus. So you can always know where your cursor is. Does that work even if the plugin window is closed? Yes, it works. And then the coordinates are given in relation to the last position of the window. That is absolutely crazy. I can have another window in focus. I can have the plugin interface closed. I guess the plugin interface isn't completely closed because of this little thing here, right? Yeah, okay. So let's turn this off. The plugin interface is now completely closed, and then I don't update the variables. Okay, that's better. I was thinking that this was actually a security thing, right? A vulnerability in terms of security, because if you have control over the mouse, or not control over the mouse position, but if you can access and read the mouse position under any circumstance, you are effectively a keylogger, or I guess a mouse logger, with all sorts of security implications. Suppose that you use an on-screen keyboard to type in your password. That could be scary if any plugin could read that. But okay, it's only updated if the plugin is in view, like this. And everything that we saw before, let's test over here. So I guess we already covered all the variables. We looked at these ones, we looked at that one, we checked each one, and then we looked at this. And this is saying that this will change typically by 120 or a multiple thereof. That's not remotely true, at least not with my mouse on my computer, right? We just saw that it was updating by I guess 3 or 5 or something. I'm getting this back to 0, by the way. That's what I'm doing right now. Yeah, so it seems to be going by in steps of 6. Very far from 120. And it seems to be consistent, going in steps of 6. But if I scroll fast, then it can go by a lot. All right, so now let's check all of these again, but with the MCP over here. So to begin with, mouse capabilities. Left button, right button, command. Command doesn't work. But it does work in conjunction with clicking. So when the plugin interface is open, even if I have another window, even if I am not on top of the plugin, command is captured. Hang on. Yeah. Okay. Command is captured. It is. Yeah, my cursor is not on top of the window, but command is being captured. But over here, command is not captured. I cannot read command from here. But if I command and click, then it's not 1, it's 5. So it captures the command when I'm interacting. And then, okay, so command and, oh, interesting. If I continue holding the mouse, but let go of command, it doesn't change, it does change the number. So it really is just an instantaneous read of the state. All right. That seems to be 16 plus 1, and then 32 plus 1, and then 8 plus 1. Okay, we checked all modifiers. Then let's try middle click. Middle click doesn't work here. Middle click does not work on this view. Right click works, but middle click does not work. And if I scroll, that doesn't work either. That scrolls this little widget. I guess I can make it bigger to try and help you see this. Well, if I make it bigger, then it doesn't scroll because it is big enough to contain the whole thing. Anyway, so yeah, it scrolls this little view, but it does not capture my scrolling. And if I hold command, same story. If I hold any other modifier, same story. So from the MCP, we are not capable of interacting with the mouse wheel. And also command and other modifiers only work if a button on the mouse is being clicked. Now let's real quick interact with the TCP, but I expect the behavior to be the same. Okay, so mouse X and Y works. Scrolling does not work. Perhaps if I have more tracks, then it will be clear that scrolling actually scrolls the project, doesn't scroll in the plugin. So that's good to know, because it probably means that we don't want to have crucial features associated with mouse wheel. Probably we want to prefer mouse modifier, or keyboard modifier like command and click and drag. That seems to be better. Anyway, so that's X and Y, width and height. Mouse wheel and horizontal wheel. They don't work. Now let's look at the buttons. I guess it's going to be the same. So 1 and 2, and holding command isn't captured, but if I click, then it is captured. Then shift Option, Control, and middle click does not work. Yeah, and scrolling doesn't work. Ah, interesting. So the 120 thing is probably only on Windows. On Windows, I can use scroll wheel in TCP, but only after I clicked in the GUI. Interesting. Yeah, good to know. So these behaviors are system dependent, and hopefully we will not have to care about this. But if we do care about this, for whatever reason we are using the scroll wheel, I guess I will avoid using the scroll wheel because it doesn't work on the MCP, at least for this plugin. But if we end up using the scroll wheel, if we end up using the scroll wheel, and if we are interested in the amount of change, which I guess we will be if we are using the scroll wheel, we want to know how much we scrolled by. We probably want to scale the scrolling differently on different operating systems. Luckily, Tail has given us a way of detecting the operating system, so we know when we are on Windows and we can change the behavior accordingly. It isn't great, but it is what it is. Okay, so I think we have a pretty good grasp of what we are and are not able to do with this measly 5 variables. Yeah, 5 variables. On macOS, I also have to scroll wheel after clicking. Oh. So I guess it is a setting, probably, right? There is some setting somewhere that tells that the scroll wheel is not going to work on the MCP and TCP. I do remember seeing some settings that had to do with these knobs. Perhaps they also affect the MCP plugins. Because I didn't like the behavior of scrolling here and that affecting the knob. I thought it was just too easy for my cursor to be anywhere, and I wanted to scroll, and I would, instead of scrolling, just changing a knob or moving a slider. So I turned that off, but it seems to also affect plugins on the MCP. Well, at least we won't have to worry about different operating systems because it's a setting. Oh, perhaps if I type wheel correctly. Yeah, so ignore mouse wheel on track panel faders and on transport. Edit fields, I guess. Let's try this real quick. So if I have this setting off, no, it still behaves exactly the same. I don't know. Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah, that's the behavior that I don't like, because it's too easy to mess things up, I think. But now with that, let's put the plugin back here on the MCP, and no luck. Oh, if I click on the plugin, then it captures the mouse, and then I can scroll. And I bet that if I go to the debugger, we'll see that value changing. Well, I have to filter for mouse stuff. I have to click on the plugin to have it capture the mouse. And then as I scroll, you can see mouse wheel here changing. But if I turn on this ignore settings, then I can click on the plugin and scroll. Oh, would you look at that? It still works. So now when I scroll over these, they don't change. But if I click on the plugin and then I scroll, then it changes the mouse wheel. Okay, so it can capture the mouse wheel. You just have to click first. Is that true of the TCP? Hopefully, probably. I'll check anyway. No, that's not true of the TCP. It's only true of the MCP, because I'm clicking and I'm scrolling and it's not capturing. Whatever. It is what it is. But did you click inside? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Funniest thing. This little bit is inconsistent between the TCP and the MCP. Capturing of the wheel. Tail, can you get the mouse being captured here? Do you do any different thing to make this happen? If I turn all of this off. Oh, if I turn this off, then it captures the wheel. That seems very weird to me. That this setting, the one we looked at before, affects the TCP, doesn't seem to affect the MCP, even with the settings as they are right now, ignoring mouse wheel on knobs and gliders. Even with that, I can still scroll over here. Whatever. So I think we have all the information we need. Let's avoid the mouse wheel because it behaves strangely. We can only see instantaneous state of mouse and keyboard modifiers. Let's get to work. I think that what I would like to do is to have some sort of horizontal difference and vertical difference on the mouse cursor. So what I would do is, I guess the first thing I'm going to do is I will have a function, or I'll have some sort of facility that will give me the difference between consecutive states of the mouse. Because what we have right now is just the instantaneous position of the cursor. I would like to see how that cursor position changes from one frame to the next. So simply come here to the JSFX section and I will start hacking something together, and then we will extract into the library the things that we like. So we'll have a JSFX X difference, I don't know, and it is the JSFX X previews and and mouse X minus. I guess I shouldn't call this JSFX X, I should call this mouse X. And what is that? Well, that is just this. So as it goes, mouse X will be captured in this variable, and the next time we go around this is going to be the previous mouse X, and this is the difference between where we are and where we were. And yeah, here it is. The mouse difference seems to work. So check this out, okay? This variable here. As I leave my mouse where it is, it's 0. And when I start moving my mouse, we can see different numbers. So between one frame and the next, I'm able to move my mouse by, it seems like 700 pixels or something. That seems to work. Now let's do the same for the Y position. And here it is. So now pay attention to this variable as well as this one. Seems to work. So with that, we will know when you click and drag, we'll know by how much you are dragging. But next, we need to know if you have clicked, and ideally I would like to know if you clicked inside this area. I guess it doesn't matter too much because this is just for visualization before you actually put the thing on the MCP. So we will start with just being able to detect these changes anywhere. You can click anywhere and drag and we'll zoom in and out. But I'm actually doing this in anticipation of having knobs on the interface. And in that case, you do want to know where the person clicked because you want the person to click on the knob before you register movements on the knob. But let's start really, really simple because we have a way of knowing if your mouse button is down. But we don't have a notion of clicking. Not exactly. So we will introduce a notion of clicking. And for that, we'll have similar variables here. We'll have JSFX, mouse, left, click, and to begin with, it will be false. Well, I shouldn't do it this way. What I should do instead is I want to capture the transition from not being clicked to being clicked. So I'll have to store left left button previous. It will be similar in spirit to these variables. And in there, I will capture mouse cap. Well, I don't like the bit field, okay? I don't like this magic numbers, and I don't like that you have to go into the docs to see what the magic numbers mean. So I will start by giving the magic numbers meaning. And I will do that by having JSFX mouse left button is equal to mouse cap and 1. And this is a mask. So I have this as a number. I will interpret this number as a series of ones and zeros, and I will mask with 1. So if mouse cap is interpreted as a bunch of zeros and ones, I am masking, so I am doing the AND operator. What I'm doing right now is briefly explaining how bit masks work. So this AND operation, we'll see what it does in a moment, and this 1 in binary reads like this. So what is the result of the AND operation? It's just going to look at 2 digits here, the upper digit and the lower digit, and it's going to do the AND operation, the bitwise AND operation. So 0 and 0 is 0, 0 and 1, or 1 is and 0. So in this case, it's 1 and 0. That's 0 as well. And the only way we'll get a 1 out is if there is 2 1s in the inputs, just like this. So this operation occurs column by column, and the output is only 1 if both inputs were 1. So with this mask, what we are doing is just ignoring all these fields, effectively setting them to 0, and having then only the bit that we care about enabled. So now let's do the same for the other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 4, 8. 16, 32, and 64. And the beauty of using masks like this is that they are independent, right? So if you click on the left button as well as the right button as well as holding shift, we will be able to capture all of those. let's give these guys names, because that's the purpose of this. I'm turning the magic numbers into proper names. So left button, right button. And this is not really mouse stuff. Well, I guess the last one is. So middle button. This is mouse stuff. Left button, right button, middle button. Then this is actually keyboard stuff. And they are, well, it's control on Windows and command on Mac. So I have to make the executive decision of going with either Windows or Mac. I guess I can also do just mod. Sometimes you see that, for instance, in this library that I use in JavaScript. There is this abstraction. So you can set keyboard shortcuts in JavaScript using this library. And you can say control or command. And you can even say control and command. But you can also say mod, and mod stands for command on Mac and control on PC. But the problem is there is no, at least not in this library anyway, so I could borrow the notion of mod, because that's what they're going with, so this would be mod, but I wouldn't know what to call this. Secondary mod? And then how do they call this? I guess they call it alt. Oh, they call it option or out. What is meta? Interesting. I guess it's just command. It's another name for command. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have a good name for this secondary. Not for this one. I don't think I have a name for this secondary modifier. I think I'm just gonna go with the Windows naming, because if you say to people Control S, Control C, Control V, most people know that if you are on Mac, you should do command instead. Even though I am developing in macOS, but I think I will go with Control, Shift, or I guess I could attach the operating system at this point, right? No. Shift, and then what is next? Alt. And then I guess I'll call this meta, because it will be the Windows key, but I don't want to call it the Windows key. Right, that's what they're calling meta. Well, and meta will be control in macOS. And if I was to call this mod, I would still have the same problem. I don't know. I wouldn't know what to call this. I guess I will call it meta, because that's more in line with what we see here. It's the Windows key. And yeah, this is awkward, but it is what it is. I will go with that. Okay, so now we have this notion of capturing a click, or not really. We have this notion of looking at the button stage. But now we want to have the notion of clicking. And I will want to have a way of detecting different clicks on different buttons separately. So it'll have a previews for left, right, and middle. So I guess I can just copy these lines, and perhaps I will copy all of them. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And then just like that, I have the previous states of everything. And in here, I can write some more logic. For instance, I guess it will be similar to all three of them, but I'm going to start sketching with the left button. Click is equal to, if the previous stage was not true and the current stage is true, then I have clicked. And that will capture an instantaneous click. But I want to preserve this stage, right? So right when you click, the previous frame was not clicked and the current one is clicked. So that is a click. But then while you're holding the cursor, that click is still ongoing. So another condition so either this or no, hang on. I guess what I want to capture is this. I just want to capture whether a click has just occurred, because otherwise this already has this notion that I'm talking about, the notion of, I guess, preserving the inertia of the click. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, this will be the instantaneous moment when you click. And then we can get into a stage of dragging. So we can listen to this, and this will just capture the instantaneous change in stage. And similarly, we can also have release. Click and release. Unclick. What are the JavaScript event names? Mouse events JavaScript. Click, double click. Oh, I guess what I'm doing is mouse down and mouse up. That's more in line with what I'm doing. I will use that. I will use those names. So this is mouse down. And well, it already says mouse, so just say down and up. And this, of course, is if the previous stage is that the button was pressed and the current stage is that it's not. That means that we are releasing. Now, so all of these I expect to go into the library, okay? All of this that I have above, all of this that I have below, this is just bookkeeping, and I expect to have that in the library. But this is something that I expect to have here on effects, right? We'll be able to ask if the button was clicked or not. So if the button was just clicked, I will want to do something. I guess I will get into a stage of JSFX mouse left button drag being true. Perhaps this could be part of the library too. I don't know, we'll see. And And let's see if these variables are doing what they're supposed to. So I am clicking, and that becomes true. And as I release, that becomes false. What is exactly the difference between this and just looking at the instantaneous state of the left button? Not much. This variable isn't doing a lot. It's not holding its weight. But these are, I think, because we are detecting clicks, and that will be necessary when we get to the point where we want to detect a click on an area. We'll look at this, and we'll look at the instantaneous coordinates of the mouse. That will be relevant. Right, so let's do something very simple, actually, to begin with. We can just look at the left button being pressed. And if the left button is pressed, we can change this zoom variable with the delta of the y coordinate. Because I want the knob, so to speak, right? I want to be able to click and drag to zoom by going up and down. Oh, but I probably want to reverse this, right? Because when I go down, it will increase this number. Yeah, positive values are moving the cursor down. So I want to invert this because I want the zoom to increase as I go up, because that's the behavior you see most often. When I scroll up, it zooms in. Yeah, everywhere else you go up to zoom in. So this is the point of reference that I want. But of course, this will be a number that is like 2 or 3 or something, and zoom is not in this range. Zoom is a much smaller number. So I will divide this by something. And this is what is going to calibrate how fast we are zooming in and out. Also, I want this to be in the bounds of these. So I will have over here on init somewhere, I guess after channels, I will have zoom minimum and maximum. I really wish there was a way for me to just capture these, because now I have a repetition here that I have to make sure I'm consistent about. Anyway, we do have in the library a way of limiting this value. I think it's called clip. Let's check real quick if this makes sense. Yes. So now I guarantee to be in bounds. Let's give this a try. It stands a chance of working. And it does work. And it seems like the random value I picked of 100, this random value, seems to work quite well. It's not too bad. I mean, putting my cursor here and clicking and dragging, it feels natural for it to move by this much. And we do have, I guess this is nitpicking, but we do have an issue where if you scroll here, the step is 0.1. But if you scroll here, the step is 0.01 because I'm taking a value that is in pixels, so it's always an integer greater than 0 or greater than or equal to 0. And I'm dividing by 100, so I'm getting 2 decimal points. And I would like that to be just 1 decimal point. So do I have a library function for this? I don't think I do, but I think I would like to have one. And this is essentially truncation. So let's implement this right after clip. So function truncate a number. Oh, and we need to know how many digits. So to do that, we can take the number, multiply by 10 to the power of digits, then take the floor of that number and divide by 10 to the power of digits. Yeah, that should work. I don't want to compute this power twice, so I'll have a factor local variable that will be this. Premature optimization. I know I haven't measured. I don't know if this works or if this improves anything. Probably it doesn't. Whatever. I just did it. So truncate, I will want to write tests for this. I'll leave that as a to-do. But I will pretend that this was working and just try it. So I'll clip, and then I will truncate with 1 digit. And now it moves in steps of 0.1. So that function works. But it seems like this is a bit of handstanding for what I'm trying to do. I think it would be better if I was able to have something that would read like this. Yeah. I would like to have something like that. And it would be a third argument to a fictitious function. I don't know what to call it yet. But what it would do is just take this argument and make sure that it's inbounds and make sure that it's respecting the step. The big difference is that here on truncate, I just got the number of digits, and that is directly the power of 10. That is easy, but the step can be an arbitrary number. In this case, it happens to be 0.1, but it could be 0.27, right? You don't have to use powers of 10. In this case, 10 to the minus 1. We don't have to use powers of 10. So this is a slightly trickier function to write. I guess I'll call this the slider function because I don't currently use that name. But we have to come up with a better name. But yeah, we have to have this function, and I don't know if I know how to define this off the top of my head. So we have a minimum, a maximum, and a step, and I don't need to prefix all of this with value this time because they are local variables to the function. They are parameters of the function. I think that to implement this, I will need to do something in terms of like the reminder of division or something. I think that this is similar to the bit crusher we did as one of my first videos on this channel working with JSFX, or perhaps the first video about JSFX on my channel. How does the bit crusher work? Yeah, I remember that on the surface it was simple, but then it was really complicated. Or not really complicated, but there were edge cases that I got wrong the first time. Yeah, and here is the multiply by something, take the floor, and divide by something situation that we saw a couple minutes ago. Can you see a lot of flies and mosquitoes in my room? What the freak? I opened the window for 5 minutes and this is what I get. And I live on the 9th floor. How do they get here? How can flies fly so high in the sky? It makes no sense. Makes no sense. Can you see them buzzing around, like saying hello to the camera? Get out of here. Annoying. I don't know how to write this function. I won't. Right now, I'll just have a big old to-do here. Or I will not have a big old to-do. I will have a big old to-do and I will return the value just so that this works, but it will not behave as it should, right? It will still give me steps of 0.01 instead of steps of 0.1. Yeah, still behaving correctly, but it is working. So let's put this guy on the TCP or the MCP and check this out. Yeah, so this does exactly what I wanted to do. You're able to zoom in and you're able to zoom out. And now that I have this here, perhaps the step is, I have to move my cursor too much. Yeah, it feels like too much. I'll divide this by 10. Okay, yeah, this is better. It's responding faster. Probably I could have some sort of indication of the zoom level over here. Or, oh, that could be nice. Many settings in REAPER, if you double click, they reset. We could have a double click situation to reset the zoom. Let's commit what we have and think about that. Yeah, okay. I will like this double click situation to happen. So we have to implement the notion of double click from first principles. I think that we should have this as, we should reason about this with a state machine. So let's reason about this with a state machine. We'll have 3 states, I think. We'll have the initial state, and then you click and you go into the first click stage, and then you click and I guess you will be on the double click stage, but you will immediately return you gotta love this ASCII art that I do. So much work. We will immediately return to the initial stage. like this. But that's not all. You could be in the initial stage, click, and if you're not fast enough, you will get back into the initial stage and the double click will not happen. So you have to be fast. Is there anything else? I don't think so. So just like we have this button down and button up, and they are instantaneous happenings, they are things that happen instantaneously, the down event and the up event, we'll have a double click event. But before we can trigger this event, we have to go through this state machine. So this is the event that we want to trigger. And these are the states we have to look into. All right, let's get down to business. We will have a left button. Oh, and I guess I will leave here some to-dos for other buttons. They should also fire down and up. The left button, double click, and that will be either 0 or 1, either true or false. It will be true when this event is firing. So that's how we fire the event. But before we fire the event, we need to have the notion of state. And I will represent these states with numbers that can be an enumeration. Hey, we'll finally use enumerations. I don't think we are using enumerations anywhere. We are not, but now we are going to. Awesome. So we'll have this state machine, we'll have the initial stage, the first click, and we don't really need to reify this stage because it's just an event. I guess I will transform this to lowercase to say that this is just an event. It's something that happens in here, actually. Okay, so let's do this. When you are in the first click stage, we'll say that if you click, we'll fire the double click event. And in my little notation here, the parentheses mean fire this event. So we have only two states, initial stage and first click. So perhaps having a whole enumeration and everything is a bit much, right? This could be just true or false. But I do like to reason about this with a state machine, and I do like the names initial and first click. So I'll have a state machine with enumerations and everything, because I think it's much more elegant. And it does, this way of reasoning about things lends itself to having things like triple clicks, lends itself to having things like combos where you have to command click and then shift click on something. I don't know. These are not really useful, I don't think, but we can reason about this way and it extends well. So yeah, state machines, love them. And let's have the stage in update then. To begin with, we are in we are not in any state actually, right? When the plugin first loads, we are not really in any stage. I guess we should be in the initial stage. But this is not code that I want to have here because this runs in the JSFX block every time. I want to have this on the init so that it runs just once. So that's my initial stage. Then what is my next stage? I want to update the stage. If my stage is equal to the initial stage, and I have a button down firing up, hang on. How does double click behave when you click? Sorry. My question is, how does double click work if you hold the button, but you don't let go? So it's not a click, it's a mouse down. Then you do mouse up and mouse down real quick. It does not trigger a double click. So if you want to do a double click, you have to do clicks in succession. You cannot be holding for a while and then letting go. All right, okay, so in order to do a double click, we'll first have to introduce the notion of clicking. And that we currently don't have. We have a notion of down and up, but a click is not a down followed by an up. It's a down followed by an up real quick. If I just hold and let go, it will not do the double click. Yeah, so let's introduce the notion of clicking first. And that one can also be a state machine. So you'll be in the initial stage and then you will receive a down. This is going to be so cool because we are going to do the click event machine, and then the second event machine will use the first event machine because this is the result of the first event machine. Fun stuff. So you will be in the initial stage and then you will go to the down stage. If time passes, you're back into the initial stage. But if you receive an up event, you can fire a click event. And the states are the initial stage and the down event, or stage. These are states. And then we will have to initialize this stage to initial. So I will go up there. This will be part of the library, so it's fine. I don't really love how this has to be so far from the rest, but it will be part of the library, so it should be fine. In the library, they can live next to one another, or nearer than they are right now. Oh, but these haven't been defined yet up there, so let's go up there and define there. Okay, that's better. But I will take a copy and put here on the comment just so we have the names available to us. Now let's do the stage update. We already have the down event. Let's do the state update. If the current stage is the initial stage and we have received a mouse down, then go to this stage. There's something that I don't like about this. because we need to know the notion of time passing. And we could look at the clock, but then we would have to store clock values. But we can also do something else, which is a bit cleverer. Instead of storing states with enumerations, we are not going to be using enumerations today. We'll find a use for enumerations, okay? We'll find a use for them. Just not today. What we'll have instead is a counter. 0. And when you press down, we'll go to something like 100. And then we'll keep decrementing this number. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. So luckily for us, the state starts with a 0, so we don't have to worry about that. So all we gotta do is we have to check if the down event has occurred. And if it has, we can say that this stage, which I guess is no longer a stage, well, I'll continue calling it a stage. It will be 100. We also decrement 1 every time. So this only happens when we hold down the button, but this happens every time. And how do we trigger this? The click event will be triggered if the stage is greater than 0 and we are receiving an up event. I will also want this number to never go negative, so I will say take the maximum between 0 and that. And now the larger we make this number, the longer you can wait between down and up events. Yeah, I think we got this. So you press the button, that will set a large number. Then you update this stage by subtracting 1, but never letting it be less than 0. And then we check if we have a mouse up and our current state is greater than 0, then that's a click. Also, I think that we should set this back to 0. So I'm going to turn this on its head real quick. Or perhaps not. Just check if this is the case. This isn't the most elegant code. I will probably change the way that this works, but let's investigate if this is even working. It worked the first time. Yeah, it seems to be too fast. So I'll make this a large number. Oh, hang on. What do I want to happen exactly? Yeah, I want this state to be back to 0 if you receive a mouse up event, regardless of whether it was a click or not. I guess it doesn't matter much because it was already 0, but anyway, I think that this makes more sense. And instead of doing the maximum and blah, 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 perhaps doing the maximum is faster, but I think it would be better to read if we had something like this. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay. No, not okay. Because this is going to update the thing to 0 and then it's gonna check the thing here and it will be wrong. Yeah, I think that this is right. Yeah, let's think about this chronologically. You start in the initial stage, no buttons pressed, and then you press the left button. This is going to trigger. This is going to set the number to a large number. If the button is being pressed, we are decrementing 1. And it is okay if it is lower than 0. We don't care. If you click and drag, if you click and hold for 1 hour, this is going to be a very, very small number. Yeah, I cannot help myself. I'll make the maximum between that and 0. And then I don't even have to do this conditional. I'm thinking about the weird case in which you hold the button for so long that you have an underflow in a 64-bit double. So you have an underflow and you wrap around, and then that could be an issue. It's not going to be an issue. It's not going to be an issue. But anyway, this is faster too, so that's good. All right, so when you press the button down, you set this to a large number, then the stage will be updated to decrement 1, but take the maximum between that and 0 in a way that this value will always be greater than or equal to 0, and this is measuring the passing of time. Then you are firing the click event if we are in this stage where the button has been clicked recently, or the button has been pressed down recently, and we are receiving an up event. But also, we want to, if you are receiving an up event, we want to set this to 0 because the button is no longer being pressed down. And this is effectively counting for how much time you have been pressing down the left button. I think that this will work. And I made this a large number so that we can look at this variable, because this variable changes so fast to 1 and then back to 0 that we have to be lucky to catch it. But this variable changes to a large number and then back to 0, you know, in more time. It takes longer for this to happen. So we'll be able to see it on the debugger. So I'm holding down, and when I let go, it's back to 0. And if I just click, if I click enough times, we are lucky, and sometimes we see a 1 firing up. Good enough for me. Doesn't that make you double click? Doesn't that make your double click time dependent on the GUI refresh rate? Very much so, yes. In fact, when we are extracting this into the library, I'll leave it myself to do. And great point. Thanks for bringing it up. I was thinking about this too. This 1000, or I guess we'll make this a reasonable number like 100. This 100 should be with respect to the refresh rate. Oh. Yeah, so let's think about this for a moment. We could, instead of having a number that we decrement, we could have we could look at the timer, we could look at the time, we could look at the clock. But looking at the clock is usually slower and more annoying, so I thought that this was going to be a clever little trick. But there is a problem. The refresh rate changes. When the plugin loads on this window, it is 30 frames per second. When it loads here, it's 60 frames per second. So your double click would need to be twice as fast here. I don't think that that's a major problem, but it's something to have in mind. Yeah, thanks for bringing this up. I will have to think about what to do with this. Perhaps looking at the clock is the right decision. I don't know. And why do I even care about checking for this, right? I don't have to set this back to 0. Why would I bother? If the mouse up event can only fire after a mouse down because of physics. So, or can it? You could click outside the interface and then drag it in and then have an up event. Does that break something? Well, it breaks the case in which you click, go away, release, click, come back in, release. I don't care about this case. I'm fine with this logic. So if you have a mouse down event set to a large number, always update the stage and check if you are still in the time and if you receive a mouse up event. This should trigger a click. Let's test this by resetting the zoom on click. So this is going to be library code, and this is going to be application code. And we already have application code below, so I'll put this over here. And I'm being specific about putting this after that, because of course, to be able to drag, we'll have to first click, but later this will be a double click, doesn't matter. All right, I will just set the zoom to zoom initial or default. I don't know, how do they call this on the JSFX documentation? Default value. So we have the zoom default is equal to 1. So it's the default, minimum, maximum, and change increment. Okay. So it can be zoomed in and I click and it goes back. But importantly, it goes back on mouse up. Is that how JavaScript does it? I think that JavaScript may do it on mouse down. You indeed really can't have mouse up without down because of the way mouse cap works. Yeah, I guess, if I click outside, that idea that I had of you click outside, then bring your mouse in and then release, that will not work, because as soon as you drag in, you will receive a mouse gap of 1. So that will be as if you have clicked just as you entered. You are right. You have this annoying tendency of always being right. And right you are again. Okay, let's investigate how JavaScript does it, because I have a feeling that JavaScript triggers a mouse down, a mouse click, as soon as you hold the mouse down, as soon as you press. So let's try this. I will go to the console, I will go to document body, and I will add an event listener of click that will console log click, and then I click and I release, and then the event fires. I click, I press the mouse down, and when I release, it triggers a click. Interestingly, in JavaScript, it triggers the click event regardless of for how long I pressed, and it triggers on mouse up. But most things like moving to different tabs, going forward and backward, moving to, oh, this is fascinating. Okay, to move to a different tab here on this inspector in Safari, when I mouse down, it changes. Can you hear the rain? And it's a thunderstorm. Can you hear that? Mosquitoes, a thunderstorm. It's the end of the world here. And I'm writing JSFX. And I'm thinking about mouse down versus mouse up. What have I done with my life? So when I press the mouse down, it changes. But when I'm moving between tabs on the browser, it is on mouse down. Mouse up. It's on mouse up. Mouse up. Mouse down. Okay. But so I guess we have no no consistency. We can do whatever we want. So let's think about how Reaper does things. Let's try to at least be consistent with Reaper. When I do this, is it mouse down or mouse up? Do you know? Don't test. Do you know? Think about it. Give the answer in the chat. Don't lie. I will press the button now, and there is a lag in the stream, so I won't be able to actually wait for you to reply in the chat. But be honest. Do you think that it behaves as a tab over here or a tab over there? Does it respond to mouse down or mouse up? It responds to mouse up. And also I can wait for a long time, and it responds to mouse up. And if I click outside, go in, then I'm dragging the track. That doesn't really work. Yeah, if I click outside and drag in and then release, then it doesn't fire. So I have to fire the mouse down in the component, and I have to fire the mouse up in the same component for a click to register. So this becomes actually a whole lot simpler than I was expecting, because in the code we can do the following. You were wrong. But thanks for trying. And is it even consistent? Because we just saw that Safari was not consistent. And I guess for a good reason too, because I think that mouse down gives you a snappier feel to your action. So mouse down is snappier, but perhaps going between tabs is not something that you want to be snappy about. I don't know. This is also only on mouse up, but this is on mouse down. Well, it's even worse on this one. If you click, you open the menu. If you hold and release, it closes back up. It's pretty much do whatever. So we'll do the following. I think that mouse down is snappier. So this whole logic of the passing of time, is kind of cute, but maybe unnecessary, maybe overkill. We'll think about it. Let's just work with these two events. So if your mouse button is pressed, and if your mouse up or down, because it's snappier. I'll do it on mouse down. Yeah, okay, let's check another thing that is related. Reaper has these meters that you can reset by clicking on them. And they reset as soon as mouse down. This is on mouse up, this is on mouse down. And what we are doing is closer to resetting this. So there you have it. It seems like Reaper also has this inconsistency, and I guess it's on purpose. Never noticed this before. The devil is always on the details, especially when it comes to design. So yeah, mouse down feels snappier here. And what we're doing is closer to mouse, to resetting that, so we'll do it on mouse down. Also, if you're resetting, yeah, the double click you have to do relatively fast. And it happens on mouse down. The double click happens on mouse down. All right, so if the mouse is down, reset to default. Of course, we'll expand that to do a double click in a moment, but let me interact with this and see if I like it. So let's zoom in, and as soon as I click, it resets. Feels good to the fingers. I would typically use down for example, tabs within the current window, but up for opening a new window or whatever. What does Safari do when you open a new window? It does it on mouse up. If you click and hold, you see the history. Oh no, I am showing my browser history to the world. That's scary. Is there something bad in here? No, it's just work stuff. Yeah, it does it on mouse. If I am quick enough, it does it on mouse up. Yeah, we'll have to decide if we want an operation to be snappy or if you want to sort of have to confirm the operation. But this we want to be snappy. Okay, so far so good, but we actually want a double click on this one. So we will need this notion of timer for the double click. And we will want the timer to be on mouse down. Yeah, we want the timer to be on mouse down the same way that resetting a slider is on mouse down. Okay, we already know the logic. It's this logic. Let's just borrow it. So this is no longer gonna be click stage. It will be double click. So if you press the mouse down, it is going to set this stage to 100. Then we update the stage. Then a double click will fire if your state is greater than 0 and we receive another down. But hang on, that's gonna fire the first time around, isn't it? So I can just put this line here, and that will do it. So a double click happens when the state is greater than 0 and we receive a mouse down. a mouse down will fire this up. Yeah, it seems like it will work. Let's just change this from down to double click. And now if I just click, I can drag and whatnot and release, and I'm good. But if I double click, it snaps back. We did it. No, hang on. No, that's wrong. That's incorrect. I think it's perhaps waiting for too long. Yeah, I think that this double click can be too spaced. So if I click and wait and click, it still works. So this number is too large. Well, we have 30 frames per second, and I think that a double click of half a second should do it. So uh, 15. If we have 30 here, this will take a whole second. If I have 15, it will take half a second. How long is a double click usually? I probably have a setting for this, but it probably is not labeled. Double click speed, I can control that, but it doesn't have labels saying how long the click speed is. So I would just have to guess that, I don't know, 200 milliseconds should be good. So if 30 frames is 1 second, or 1000 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds is how many frames? 200 times 30 divided by 1000, that's 6. So now a double click works, but if I click and wait and click, it doesn't work. Click and wait and click. I think I want a bit more. I will go with the 15, half a second. That should be good. Okay, zooming in. Click, wait, click. Click, wait, click. Double click. Feels good to the fingers. That should do it. For your information, I'm trying to log into my iCloud account. It's not only impossible. Why? What's going on? I once had this weird situation where I was asked some kind of two-factor authentication that was logged into my iCloud account, if you know what I mean. And I had to call Apple, and I had to call their support, and then they enabled some other kind of two-factor authentication. I forget what it was exactly, but yeah, you can sometimes lock yourself out of your iCloud account, particularly if you don't have another device logged in nearby, right? If you have another device logged in nearby, if your phone is logged in and you're trying to log into your Mac, you can usually use your phone to log into your Mac. But if you need to receive an SMS or something else, it can be tricky. I'm using 14 on my drum synth at 30 frames per second. If you didn't change the frames per second, then it is at 30 frames per second. And 14 seems to be close enough to 15, so I'll give you 15. And yeah, so you are implementing this in exactly the same way? Fascinating. That's great. I'm happy that I'm rediscovering this, because I swear I never wrote any code like this. I'm just thinking about things and recreating stuff from first principles. Right, we have been going on for 2 hours here. It's time to wrap up. So it seems like we were able to fulfill the promise of the title of this stream. We have been able to do, what did I call this stream? Mouse interactivity. And we definitely looked into mouse interactivity. So we now have the notion of firing events, we have the notion of a state machine, we have this cute trick for counting time, we can react to, so think about the user of the library. You can react to left buttons, to double clicks. It's pretty cool. I guess what's next to do is to look at the coordinates of a click, so that if you click and drag outside, it doesn't change the zoom. But if you click and drag inside, it changes the zoom. And this is just mostly for helping you out to set the settings that you like. So I don't think that maybe this is a huge deal. But as I said, I am sort of preparing for when you will have this as a knob somewhere. So I do want to have control over where you click and drag. And also check this out. If I go up, it goes beyond the limit. And if I go down, it goes below the limit. Oh, that's because we are fudging this, the slider function. Yeah, okay, I have to do that. So perhaps we will address that. I'll think about it. Yeah, this is honest work that we did today. So yeah, that's the thing. I'm on Android, so Apple won't send a preset password notification. Oh boy, at least every time I call them, they were great. Sometimes they couldn't fix the issue right away. I had to wait a little bit, but at least they answered. And even I had this crazy situation where I moved to Portugal, but I still had money left on my Apple Cash, and that is US only. So I changed my account to a Portuguese account because I wanted to have access to the Portuguese catalog on Apple Music and the App Store and so forth. I wouldn't even be able to install the app for my bank over here in Portugal if I didn't transfer. So I had to do that. And I couldn't use my Apple Cash because it was locked in, but they allowed me to transfer the country without cashing out on my Apple Cash. So I had to call them a couple times, and I was even at one time transferred to the bank that manages Apple Cash and that manages, I guess, Apple Pay and everything. But eventually, the money got transferred to my regular bank account in the US, so it worked. I didn't lose any money. And that all of that is to say, the Apple support is pretty good in my experience. I hope that they help you figure this out, because it's always weird. I need to wipe my hard drive, but it's imperative that I can log into iCloud before I do. Of course. Good luck. And yeah, at least if you have to call them, I think you will have a good experience. All right, so I'm out of here. And we streamed for 2 hours today. That is a lot. Thanks, Dale and Bo, for joining me on this ride. Everyone else who is watching, thank you too. Make sure you click and smash and destroy and spank the subscribe button. I don't know why I'm saying this. Tomorrow I will take a break because we streamed a lot. I may be back on Friday or on Monday. We'll see. Thank you very much for being here. Have a good one. I see you next time. Bye. My keyboard shortcut didn't work. I will have to do the good old goodbye again. See you when I see you. Have a good one. Bye. Thank you for watching the stream. You know how great it has been. Or maybe it sucked, and I am glad that you stuck with me. And soon we'll all will be back together for some more coding or talking or chilling. The next time I'll be streaming.